I remember a primary school picnic down at the beach. Everyone had such a wonderful time. But eventually home time came and families gathered together. They loaded up the cars and headed back up into the hills. Now one rather large family arrived home very exhausted, and as they stepped out of the car, one of the children said, "Where's Leon?" They looked around, but Leon wasn't there. They'd left him at the beach. He was just waiting for them when they returned to pick him up. I can tell you they were happy that Leon was all right. Something similar happened a long time ago in Jerusalem, where thousands of people had gathered together to celebrate the Passover. It was a wonderful festival, but now it had finished and it was time to return home again. Mary and Joseph and their family were part of the crowd. They weren't travelling alone, but were headed back toward Nazareth with extended family, friends and neighbours. They didn't have a large station wagon to cart the family like Leon's parents had. They simply wandered along the road. No doubt they were well spaced out and chatting about the wonderful time that they had had back there in Jerusalem. Now we can only imagine that Mary and Joseph each assumed that Jesus was walking with the other. Imagine the horror when they arrived to set up camp for that night. Most of us have had that sinking feeling at some time in our life, so we can easily imagine the panic. Jesus was not with Mary, and Jesus was not with Joseph. They checked and double-checked with their relatives and the friends, but Jesus was nowhere to be found. And what's more, no one had seen him in the travelling group. Imagine the heaviness of the parents as they retraced their steps to Jerusalem, asking along the way if anyone had seen their son. Imagine the daunting task of looking for a boy in a city the size of Jerusalem, not only with its large population, but still lots of visitors present. Finally, after 3 days of fruitless searching, Mary and Joseph came to the temple and discovered that the experts of the law and the scripture were talking with Jesus. He was there, sitting amongst the teachers, listening to them, asking them questions. He wasn't, as some people sometimes suggest, teaching the teachers. He was simply being a good student, listening and asking questions. Perhaps so he was being more than a good student, because all who heard him, the scripture says, were amazed at his understanding and his answers. His parents were astonished. What was this poor carpenter's son doing discussing the law and the prophets with the finest religious minds in the land? Other than this story in Luke 2, Jesus' childhood is skipped over entirely by the gospel writers. From this fact, I think we can properly conclude that Jesus' boyhood was probably somewhat normal. Of course, there are legends about Jesus' childhood, none of which made it into the Bible. But can you imagine the turmoil in the parents' hearts as they finally found their lost son? The fear and the anxiety and the worry giving way to a sense of relief and joy. Mary said, "Why have you treated your father and I like this?" Jesus' response, "Why were you searching for me? Didn't you know that I would be found in my Father's house?" Yes, we're looking at people who met Jesus, and we have to include his parents in this journey, Mary and Joseph. They were struggling to understand what was going on here. No doubt they reflected upon the words of the angel to Mary and to Joseph and the amazing events around his birth in Bethlehem. Jesus was a special child. Jesus, in his response to his mother, was simply saying, "I'm growing up. I'm no longer the little child you've been used to." That's always hard for parents to hear, but it happens to us all. This message, which I think can be called Left Behind, speaks to us with clarity. We can easily leave Jesus out of our lives, not even notice that he's not walking with us. And it's only when we seek to discover where he is, and indeed who he is, that the pieces fall into place. In fact, there's a well-known poem called Footprints in the Sand, which reminds us that even though we may forget him, he never forgets us. Our prayer must be to know Jesus and to make him known and to walk with him. Have a wonderful week, and may God richly bless you.